Hi guys, today I'm talking about when your renders crash. Can be extremely annoying and sometimes difficult to diagnose. Um, I'll do the TLDR first. It's almost always due to memory. I guess I would make sure that my graphics drivers are up to date, but assuming that they are, and even if they're not, that's very rarely going to be the reason that the program crashes. So there are a number of ways that the program can crash. The first one is that it simply crashes back to the desktop mid-render and the whole scene is just kicked out of memory and Poser crashes. The second is that it renders halfway through. Oh, this is saving the scene and this scene is really huge. Okay, it just auto saved there mid video, and with this scene it takes forever. There's a rare occasion when you might want to have autosave turned off. Right, so the second way that it might crash is like this. It will be mid-render, it'll render part of it, and then it will stop like this, and then you'll just have a half a picture. And this is the clearest indicator that it just didn't have enough memory. I would say this is almost certainly system memory as opposed to GPU memory. So there's two types of memory. There's the system memory, which is your RAM in your machine, and there's the memory on your graphics card. Rarely in my experience is a crash caused by graphics card memory, but we can kind of resolve both of those. So this is crashed halfway through, and to me this means that it's run out of system memory. The last way that it might crash, and I saw this doing an animation recently, is that it'll either render to black really quickly, or if you're doing an animation, it will start rendering frames, and then midway through, it will just start rendering the remaining frames black, or it will just crash. And again, that kind of indicates to me that it's a system memory problem because it already has the scene in memory, and it's the scene construction process that is causing it to crash. So how do we resolve them? Well, the simple answer is to make sure that you have nothing unnecessary running in your system. Now, when you use Poser, when you add things to your scene and take things out and jiggle things around, it's not very good at flushing its own memory out. So supposing, let's have a look at this scene. I mean, this is a classic scene for crashing because there's just so many figures in it. But and there's dozens, if not hundreds, of flowers there as well. But supposing I tried out 10 different characters before I got this, and loads of clothes and different props, and then deleted them, they're still partly taking up memory. So if then when I come to render, the program crashes or it just won't render the scene, what I need to do is just close Poser down and then reload it, and load this scene in straight away, and then try and render from cold without doing any more stuff to the scene. Now, it can also be caused by other things running in the background. For example, Firefox, the internet browser, is incredibly memory hungry, and even 2 or 3 browser tabs open in Firefox. I often have Firefox running and I'll be watching news or something on YouTube while I work on a Poser scene. And that will often be enough to crash it. So close any extra programs you've got running. Like at the moment, I've got Premiere, I've got Word, I've got Photoshop, I've got Firefox with God knows how many tabs open, I've got OBS plus Poser plus Internet Explorer all running simultaneously. And then if I run this scene, if it won't render, well, I'm going to know exactly why. So I would close everything down that you don't need and then try and render. If that still doesn't work, then, as I say, completely restart your PC, load Poser, load your scene, then render from fresh. Don't have anything else running in the background. If even that doesn't work, what you could do, and I really, really hate doing this, but is go through your startup and make sure that there's not a load of stuff running in startup that might be taking up memory, such as proxies and fan controls and various apps that you might have running in the background. So try and stop them. And as a very, very last resort, take this scene. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 male characters and 3 female characters. And what I might do is make sure that the male characters all use the same skin texture. It will make the scene look a bit more vanilla, but it will take up a lot less memory. So I'd change the skin texture for each of it, because obviously I've changed the texture here for each of them to give them their own unique flavour. Even if they don't all have different head shapes, I've got the different skin textures. Also, I might have I tend to work with Michael and Victoria loaded with morphs all the time. I have a default version of those programs which has all the morphs injected so that I don't have to re-inject them every time. But that might be a bridge too far as well. So simplify your scene as much as you can without actually losing content detail. And as I said earlier, you might want to ensure that you're using the latest video drivers. One more thing, and it's a long shot, but if your system doesn't have much memory, so supposing you're working on a graphics card that's got 4 gigs of RAM and on a desktop machine that has only 16 gigs of RAM, so neither of those is really good. I mean, for a scene like this, it would just die trying to do with either of those amounts of memory, GPU or system memory. But your system memory, when your PC runs out of system memory, what it will do is it will start using your hard drive as memory. I can't remember the name of it now, but swap file onto the hard drive. And if your hard drive is full or very slow, that can also really mess up your rendering. So make sure that your swap file, wherever that's stored, by default it'll be your C drive, but you can actually change it to other drives. So you could switch your swap file to an NVMe, for example, to make it faster. I try never to use the swap file. I try to have plenty of memory. This machine's got 64 gigs, and I really ought to go up to 128 now for these kind of scenes. But the trouble with going up to 128 gigs of RAM, it's great for holding textures and lots of figures, but the problem is that my GPU has, I think, 24 gigs. It's RTX 3090, and even that is not enough. The amount of memory on the GPU, but also when you have a lot of figures like this, OpenGL and the mere performance of the GPU is not fast enough to start manipulating scenes like this. Also, here's a little trick. The floor looks grey, but in actual fact, there's a plane there. And what I've done with that plane is I've put displaced grass on there, and that again will kill your memory. Grass, cloth simulations, those sort of things will kill your memory. So again, when we're talking about simplifying your scenes, if you've got a scene where the essence is the busyness of the scene rather than any clever stuff like the grass here, then simplify that kind of stuff. Especially displacement doesn't render well on Superfly anyway. This was designed originally for Firefly, and on Superfly it's going to be lost because the plane probably doesn't have enough resolution. Let's have a look. Yeah, look, it's a very simple plane, so I'd have to subdivide that so high, and then I'd have a different kind of memory problem. So you can sometimes, if you get problems with a scene not rendering, you can go to the log and look here. We've got a whole bunch of errors showing up here. It's not even rendering, but there's a whole billions of errors shown. In fact, it's not even rescaling. This log is the whole thing is just seconds from crashing. I'm not moving the mouse at all, and it's jumping all over the place. This is not resized. God knows what's going on here. Let me try that one more time. No, just going crazy. Yeah. So for some reason, one of these characters, probably this guy, I think this guy's called Beanpole, and for some reason it's having trouble with his textures, and that also can cause crashing when it encounters errors in the scene. Um, Poser's reasonably good at error trapping. If it traps an error, it'll just render to black, or it just won't render at all. But sometimes it will just crash halfway through, and that's just a pain in the butt if it happens. But you know, that is the nature of Poser, unfortunately. Yeah, so make your scenes as error free as you can, and you can see now it's doing an auto save there, so it's going to take 5 minutes, I guess. Keep your scenes nice and simple if you can, or more memory if you can't. Less textures certainly helps, but again, if you want the variety, well, then make sure you've got plenty of swap space if you need it, and make sure that all your additional programs are shut down, and try rendering straight away from cold. One more thing that can sometimes, in very extreme situations, get around this is rendering using the render queue manager. What you do is you go to your render settings, and when you go render, you do send render to queue, and then that will open up the queue manager, which is the application that comes with it. And it seems to me that Queue Manager is a leaner renderer than rendering directly in Poser. It doesn't seem to have the OpenGL baggage that goes with it. So here's Queue Manager, and that will load that even if Poser's not running, this will still run. And that can be a last case way of getting around render crashes. So hopefully that gives you some ideas, guys, and happy rendering.